This is kind of a play-by-play on the last streetcar trip, the one that the Minnesota Railfans Association chartered to operate the day after the streetcars quit. So the streetcars quit on June 18th, 1954, and on June 19th, the MRA took a trip over the remaining trackage. And this is a ticket from it. And you can see it was $2, and it was kind of an all-day, almost an all-day deal. And so, well, we've got this in our collection. You notice it says 2 cars used, 1775. And so they start at East Side Station, and of course, East Side Station is already for sale here, an entire city block. And here they are with the 2 cars ready to pull out. And you notice, like, people are wearing hats. And this, by the way, this is Bakken, the Minneapolis superintendent. He was on this trip. And so here they are out on First Avenue Northeast in front of East Side Station. It's always kind of cool to see, how complicated the track was and the overhead wire. And so the first stop was over at the St. Paul campus of the intercampus line. And they're on the loop right by the campus. And I kind of like this shot because it's a little bit different angle. And so they made a number of photo stops along the line. And this one is at University Grove, which is in the ravine that's between Cleveland Avenue and Eustis Avenue. And you see they got the Minnesota Railfans sign on there. And then they go into the Minneapolis campus. And this is the Dinky Dome in the background. Falwell Hall over here. And of course, they stopped and took pictures on the loop. Another picture on the loop with 1300. One of the ways, if you ever see a picture of 1300 and it doesn't have its advertising signs on, then you know it's on the last trip, because the ad signs were taken off by this time. And then they went down the little Oak Street line, and they ended at the Y at Oak and Beacon. This is Beacon Avenue. And if you were to turn the camera around, you'd be looking at the U of M Memorial Stadium. And so then out the Como Harriet, and they made a stop here at 36th Street on top of the bridge, leading right down to the east shore of Lake Calhoun. And this was the bridge that about 3 months or so before the end of service, a truck ran into it, and they had to go out. A truck ran into it, and they had to go out and repair it so they could run it for about 3 more months and then abandon it. Another view at the bridge. And then, of course, they stopped in both directions at the Lake Harriet station. By the way, we had a lady come down to the streetcar, and she used to live in the neighborhood. And she said she was down visiting, and we were talking about the station. And she said the lady who ran the confectionery in there was Mrs. Schmidt. And Mrs. Schmidt was apparently not very user-friendly. She was kind of impolite and all. And this lady remembers her as a kid not liking Mrs. Schmidt. And so now we're headed out to Brookside, and we're behind St. Thomas School. This is Upton Avenue in the distance, and this is the Harriet Terminal House. This is where the underground cable ended, and it went over. They put it into a pole line then to go out to Hopkins and Excelsior. Now we're out at the Brookside Loop. Of course, we're hard up against the Minneapolis, Northfield, and Southern Railroad, and it accommodated the rail fans by running a train by. Here's the motorman. This is that Brookside Shelter, which when they went and created this loop in 1951 after cutting the line back from Hopkins, somewhere they had this shelter, which was one of the Lake Minnetonka line shelters from west of Hopkins. So I don't know where they found it, but they found it and put it back here. Here you see a Minneapolis Tribune box for 5 cents. And these are the ones where the papers were just sitting in there and it was voluntary. We're back at the Lake Harriet station. You may recall seeing these with kind of the filigreed iron, but this was a useful set of shots because it shows the underside of the canopy, which we really hadn't seen much before. And of course, all this platform and the railing is underneath our current platform, the north side of the station that also doesn't get pictured very often. And then after they got into downtown, they took a trip over to Snelling. Now, the University Avenue line was only it was operational, but the line had been completely replaced by buses, and it was only operational so you could have track access to Snelling shops. And so they took advantage of the fact that there weren't any other streetcars out and ran over to Snelling. So they made a photo stop here in front of Kaufman Union at the U of M. And then over to Snelling. They kind of wandered around the yard, took some pictures, and then came back. Here they are coming back over the Washington Avenue Bridge. So it looks like they stopped. I see that's Ray Benson right there, Casey Benson's dad. Another picture out on the bridge. They're blocking traffic. And then, of course, they stopped under the Washington Avenue Viaduct on Washington by Chicago. Here's another shot of that. Well, I think this might be Bill Cordes here. Oh, and out of Brookside, they took, and this was a standard thing on the Minnesota Railfans Association excursions. They had somebody who had a panoramic camera, and at the end of the trip or some appropriate place, they would take a big shot. They did this for a couple, three other excursions, but this is out of Brookside. So then, because the Blue Line LRT started up almost within a week or two of 50 years from the date that the streetcars quit, we arranged to have a trip on the Blue Line on the day before they started up. Not the day before, but before they started up. And it only went out as far as Fort Snelling Station at that time. They didn't get the extension to Mall of America for a few more months. So I went into the ticket machine at Fort Snelling Station so I could get a ticket that was printed before it was actually open for service. And then we restaged the panoramic photo at the loop by the shops with a bunch of us in uniform and a number of people who had ridden that 1954 trip and who were in the photograph.